In the context of our cultural ecosphere, there are a number of problems, violence being one of them, trauma being another, shame being a third. And Brené Brown, in her TED Talks and works on shame, building on John Bradshaw, talks about shame as the silent epidemic. Shame is the thing that, when it comes up, people turn away. Brené has talked about this repeatedly in her research, even under the auspices of scientific university research. All it takes is her mentioning that she's a shame researcher, and suddenly very talkative people that are chatting up all around just don't want to talk about her because it is a silent epidemic. Silence and secrecy being one of the ingredients of shame, it perpetuates itself by the fact that no one wants to talk about it. And I think one of the cores of shame is the deep-seated belief that at the core, based on the inadequate response to emotions by our parents in a largely emotionally illiterate culture. By illiterate, I just mean, the vast majority of the population has not received a single hour of formal education about the psychology and biology of emotion, which is an illiterate state or a superstitious state at best. So in that context, where the very act of bringing up shame induces a shaming response, the response of silence, the response of exclusion, the response of rejection, denial, blame, discounting, etc., it becomes an epidemic when the response to an epidemic, it's as if, when flu comes up, we give you a vaccine. When a cold comes up, we give you vitamin C. But when HIV comes up, we give you a transfusion of HIV-infested blood and tell you it's your fault. And so it's obviously, in Gary Slutkin's work on the epidemic of violence, it's obviously going to perpetuate until we as a culture learn the ingredients that create shame and undo them. And so shame, I think, is one of the most important narratives in the breakdown of trust, the breakdown of law, the breakdown of safety, the breakdown of health, and all the different repercussions that have gone on in this terrain. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what I've learned so far in this drop in a bucket awareness of this most prominent of emotional epidemics. I travel around the world, and in the United States, I experience more shame than almost anywhere else. But because shame itself is shameful, there is often a facade that is more manically produced to cover the shame. Thus, a lot of shame and even more shame denial. I'll talk about some of this personally, just the message that I've received as an American man about what is shameful and what creates the experiences of shame for me. One message of shame, and it's an important message in parent-child relationships, is that you must be someone you cannot be. When a child is expected to be perfect, as an example, this is a message of shame. This ties into the delivery method of shame, because if shame is a virus, it has to have a delivery method. The two extreme angles at which shame enters, usually for the first time in infancy and children, is one of two vectors. On the one hand, there's the subhuman parent, the parent who embodies everything that feels disgusting. Doesn't dress or shave, oily skin, slouching, failing, drinking, not paying back, basically whatever the culture says is honorable. Someone who embodies that which is dishonorable, that which is outside of cultural honor, is someone who embodies shames, someone who leers at children, this and that and the other. And this becomes someone that people avert their eyes from, don't want to talk about, don't want to see. This. So this is one vehicle for shame, because a child who's growing up, learning, this is what it is to be honorable and welcome and included in this culture, whatever the culture is. It's not a rational or moral thing. It's what's welcomed in the culture. That their parent, that their uncle, that their sibling, etc., is not that, is something that is so undesirable and ugly that people actively participate in a ritual of ignoring and denial rather than include that person. And when that person engages with a child in some way, there is kind of a transference of shame, either through their behavior and its messages, or sometimes just associations, to have a feeling of revulsion or disgust. And this is one shame delivery method. But the other shame delivery method is particularly common in high-achieving individuals. And it builds on a supposition that this culture inoculates its citizens with shame. It's very, very hard to find an individual in the culture that, without blanking it out in a big manic denial paradigm, actually has no shame while seeing clearly all that they are in light and dark shadow. And to some extent, because there's positive and negative shame, there's the shame of I'm not perfect and I make mistakes and I'm human and I'm sorry. So there's the positive shame that I make mistakes. There's the negative shame, I am a mistake. I am so fundamentally flawed, basically, that the only way to just divert attention from that is I never make mistakes. How could you possibly spot my flaw? I'm perfect. And this is the other delivery method by which shame moves towards a child. Because when an imperfect human being who, of course, like everyone makes mistakes, cannot make mistakes, the method or the message consciously or unconsciously communicated to the child is that you are a mistake. You make the mistakes. So the shame-based parent who is superhuman as opposed to subhuman is the one where they forget to buy the milk that day, and when it comes into the reality where there is no milk, often the child has learned it's not safe to say anything why there isn't any milk, because they've watched their parents go into all kinds of dangerous contortions to deny they do anything wrong. So of course there's the awkward silence, and then either the parent says absolutely nothing and walks away with the clear inclination, kind of like, it's whatever it is, it's your fault, kid. Or they flip it on the child and say, you forgot to remind me to get the milk. I was going to get the milk, and then you asked a question right when we were going by the store. You ruined my concentration, and that's why we don't have any milk. Here I am doing this, and you have to ask a question. And we don't have any milk, and you're not going to get any dinner because blah, 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 blah. And I'm perfect. I don't make mistakes. You are the problem. This is superhuman shame. And this is often followed by all kinds of frenetic activity. The person has to, go off and jog on the treadmill and do this and do this and do this. And every time they glare at the child, it's with the message, can't you do anything right? Come on, I'm doing this. I've got this to do. I'm running a house. I have a job. You puny 5-year-old, you're just doing absolutely nothing. And this will, despite the insanity of it, because of the force of emotion, because the parent basically communicates in no uncertain terms, that you better take this shame, or I will beat the crap out of you. I will kill you if necessary. I will abandon you. I will punish you. I will humiliate you. Basically, your life is going to be hell unless you carry my inadequacy. It's not me who has too much on their plate, blah, 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 that has any mistake. It's you, the 5-year-old. It's you, the 10-year-old. It's you, the 15-year-old. Why didn't you do this? Why do you have to make me look bad? I put you in this school, da, 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 da. So you have the subhuman shame. There's this sense, anytime their parent is around you, your friends are like, who's that? And just the embodiment of everything the culture says is revolting, which is nothing in all cases to do with the individual. We're a very shaming culture. I remember being absolutely humiliated that there was rust on our car. That's, oh gosh, I have to be seen getting into a rusty car. It's like I'm tainted. The cool kid, his dad takes him into a Porsche. I get into a rusty Volvo. It's like, how do I avoid, so it's not always, anything actually bad. It's just in a materialistic culture in which you are judged based on your possessions. There is something shameful in the relative value of this person and this person, Porsche, rusty Volvo. So these are the messages that I have received as an American man that tell me that if these things are going on, it's my fault, I'm undesirable. And the reason that Brené Brown talks about shame as a trauma goes back to our pack species natures as monkey mammals. 100,000 years ago, we were in the trees. And in a predatorial culture, where snakes, lions, etc., eat monkeys or gazelles or whatever, it is always the outlier that is most vulnerable. It is the gazelle that cannot keep up with the herd that is plucked off by the lion, by the whatever. And there is a biological message that if we are excluded, that if we are the one being humiliated, being shamed, being cast out, as we refuse to have empathy with your feelings, you're on the outside. You are the one who is going to be pecked off because your immune system will be down. You'll have higher elevations of fear, adrenal fatigue. You won't have the support. You will be the sacrifice in the community. And this ritual of sacrifice, embodied in all kinds of different cultures and religions, speaks to a deep-seated fear, knowing that someone will die, someone will be humiliated, someone will be blamed, someone will be shamed, and I don't want it to be me. But if it is me, I'm in a weakened state. If you're shamed and an outcast, you can't get a bank loan, you can't get a driver's license, you can't sometimes get a passport, you can't vote. You are in a weakened state by the nature that your herd, your tribe, has cast you out. And in the brainwashing of every cult, of every culture, into be this way and don't be this way, this shame is at the core of that brainwashing. This is what it is to be a man. You can be honored and included if you are this way. If you are this way, you are excluded. And so I learned, as many of us have, that there were a number of taboo things for me as a man. And one of the things is that when people demand that I be someone I cannot be, this is a mathematical impossibility, carry that out to the street, I can't lift it. I told you to carry that out to the street. Okay, I'll drag the thing, spilling garbage halfway, plastic ripping, And why did you spill the garbage? So one of the things when you've got a shame-based power structure, whether it's in the military, in home life, in bullying, etc., is you learn to be silent about the irrational demand of the superhuman person. The superhuman person who the whole message is, I am better than you. You must carry the shame. It's not my fault for realizing that a 5-year-old boy can't carry this garbage out. It's your fault for not being able to carry it out. You learn that silence and pretense is necessary to survive. So I need to lie, which of course gives the message that who I actually am is not adequate, is not acceptable within the cultural framework. So why is this so critical? Because a child in a vulnerable period cannot be cast out. A 5-year-old hurled out on the street is going to die or be, sick, used for prostitution, etc., etc. This is not, so you must be someone you cannot be. And if you cannot be someone you cannot be, you are inadequate. You are outside. So keep that a secret. Your needs are not valuable enough to meet. And you are weak for having needs. This is again an irrational statement. Every single one of us goes through periods of our lives, all of us and children, but every one of us from time to time, where our safety is not in our control. You go out on Highway 101, 65 miles per hour, you've got more than 1,000 people who, if they ram you like this or cut you off like this, your car is totaled. Your life is forfeit. You are in a wheelchair. You are brain dead, whatever it is. But your needs are not valuable enough to meet, and you are weak for having them. Being shamed for having needs that cannot be met. This is a very, very painful and lonely area of shame, which, being a child of two parents with varying degrees of PTSD, incapable of emotional bonding and repair at a level necessary to heal the trauma and violence they were so capable of inflicting, meant extraordinary states of emotional desperation and need that was not met, which creates despair, hunger, desperation. And the most lonely thing as a young man for me in this state was knowing I need reassurance, I need holding, I need comfort. I need to know I will not be thrown out and abandoned forever, that I'm okay. Even though I couldn't do this thing that I couldn't do, even though I cannot do this other thing that I cannot do, even though I am the object of hate and rage and this, I need to know I will not be thrown out. And the message, your needs are disgusting. Your needs disgust me. I do not want to see you again as long as you have these needs. What kind of a man are you? I'm 5 years old. What kind of a man are you that you have these needs? Go meet your own needs. You think this life is filled with people, you are the problem. So it's another message of emotional exclusion, and you're weak to have these needs. We do not want to include you. We don't want someone with needs and this sensitive, how disgusting. Just go away. Don't you realize you are not welcome here? And the message being, there's nothing wrong with a fucked up culture that allows parents with PTSD to have children, which a simple census report could alert them. Hey, you probably are going to violate your children. Are you sure you want to have them? No. There's nothing wrong with a culture that doesn't teach a single hour of emotional literacy in high school or kindergarten. There's nothing wrong with a culture that defines you based on how much money you make. No. There's nothing wrong with the family. There's nothing wrong with the culture. There is something wrong with you. This is also a very important message. It's not our problem. It's your problem. There is something wrong with you. You are not adequate to be included, to be loved, to be safe, to be protected. You are less than us. Do you see me struggling over, me, the 6-foot giant? You see me struggling over this garbage bag? See, I don't have a problem with a garbage bag. What is such a big deal, you idiotic 5-year-old? So you are less than us. Without the acknowledgement, of course, that I'm a giant, you're someone in my care. You're someone I have a spiritual, ethical, and moral responsibility to protect from an unhealthy culture, not to shame with the viruses I hold and bow to in that culture. You are a burden and a problem. Your needs, your inabilities are a burden and a problem. And if it wasn't for you, we would be okay. You are the reason that, fine, I make a mistake from time to time, and it's because of you. You, the 5-year-old, you, the 7-year-old, you are ruining my life. If there is anything wrong with me, it is all about you. The message being, if you will just disappear, if you would be kind enough to die, I would be perfect again. But because of you, I'm not perfect. It's because of you. And this hatred at the child is a profound source of shame. It's also one of the most deepest forms of spiritual abuse, because every child is born in this state of innocence in which they want nothing more than to please their parents. It's like, Mom and Dad, what do I have to be? What do I have to do to make you happy? I'll tell you what you have to do. You have to be completely inadequate. You have to own all my shame and all my problems. You have to take all my hate. You have to be blamed for it. and then I'll grudgingly let you survive. Okay, Mom, and this comes the shame contract. I will hold your shit as long, and I will look like the ugly one, and I will look like the stupid one, and I will get bad grades so that you can complain about, oh, why we do everything for you, why do you get bad grades? I will carry all that as long as you'll let me live. The contract of shame that every child in a shame-based culture signs with their culture, their school, their parents, to hold the inadequacies, because the culture that is being expressed to the child via this delivery method is no more kinder on the parents than it is on the child. And when a parent has to choose between feeling embarrassed and inadequate that there's something wrong with them, or passing the buck on to the child, most parents do not get the cultural, legal, moral, spiritual support to own the burden, so they give it to the child. Being blamed. The core message, I'm okay, you're not okay. Specifically to being a man, I've received a number of messages that in silent looks, in abandonment, in averted looks, I don't want to look at this, oh gosh, so-and-so is making such a fool out of themselves, oh gosh, he's doing it again. It's like, oh, let's just not talk about it and go silent around him, etc., when he is in these states. So one of them is being out of control is shame. If I burst into tears, oh gosh, so emotional. So in a male chauvinistic culture where everything feminine is automatically derided as being, not, we're too polite to say it these days, right? But we all know that being too emotional, it's not even worth my, I'm kind of protecting them by not exposing just how disgusting it is, but we have a look, right? Too emotional. Yeah, I know what you mean. So being out of control is shame, which a lot of these things produce the very thing that is then shame. So for example, you terrify a 5-year-old by shouting at him that it was his fault because you don't have any milk. Now they are crying helplessly because they realize they're in an insane world with parents that are willing to betray them right and left and lie if necessary, to abuse them. And there's absolutely nothing they can do. A 5-year-old doesn't have any money. They can't get any milk. They can't drive. There's nothing they can do, but it's their fault. So the child is induced into a place of helpless grief and weeping, only to be shamed and given the message that if you helplessly weep, the most rational thing in the world, when you're being traumatized and abused by giants that your life depends on, there's something wrong with you. There's not something wrong with your parents, you see. There's something wrong with the boy who weeps uncontrollably. The boy that is sociopathic and beats the dog, well, that's being a boy, right? Okay, fine, we'll accept that. But the boy that weeps uncontrollably for the grief and the horror of what it is to be raised in this culture, we don't like that. Being needy is shameful. I can't tell you the number of American women that I've overheard, mother talking to other women, other this, high women, this, that, and the other. I hate needy men. I can't stand needy men. Disgust me. Well, I am a man with deep emotional needs. And every time I hear the loathing targeted, I know that a core part of me is not welcome, is disgusting. And if I'm attracted to that woman, if I think there's something beautiful about her, And I want her to see something beautiful about me. And I know that a big part of me is disgusting to her. A couple of things will happen: grief, sadness, disconnection, or perhaps I join in on the abuse. Yeah, I hate neediness as well. And I shove that part down deeper and deeper, knowing that secretly I am not worthy of anything more than disgust. And this creates a very passive-aggressive relationship. Because on the one hand, the closer I get to you, the more the true self in me is going to erupt, knowing that when it does, I'm going to be hit down. Oh, I thought you were better than those needy men. I see, I just can't find a good man. Well, get out of here. Do I have to say it? You're too needy. I'll go fuck some sociopathic man who doesn't tire me with their emotional needs. And this is from women. I'm not talking about the men who, they're there. I'll just be going now because you've got some emotions. Oh, and need. Oh my goodness. Well, call me if anything. If I can do it, you can do something. No. Call me if I can do anything. Bye. So, if you have needs, there's something wrong with you. You should be excluded. You should be traumatized by being very clear. You're not welcome here. Being rejected is shameful. In a sociopathic, because what happens when one child after another goes through this protocol of being raised as an American boy, etc., is the desperation for acceptance, belonging is intense, and it becomes sociopathic. Because your weeping is not honored. Your need is not honored. Who you are is not honored. And you do not feel safe. You are in trauma, expecting to be totally excluded, and you go into this fight, flight, freeze mode of calculating, what do I have to do to not be the one being bullied? This is a sociopathic state induced by a sociopathic environment in which the next level of deepening the shame is to become the abuser. Okay, so-and-so over there, 5 years old, doesn't look very cool, he's crying, he's now the target of the bully. Okay, what's my move here? Well, I don't really care about him either way, but what's going to help me survive? Let me join in the bullying. Let me make a particularly cutting remark to show that I belong with the sociopathic crowd. But some part of me is dying to be a part of this. But it doesn't matter. It's too urgent to survive culturally in this dog-eat culture. So being rejected is shameful. So-and-so asked a girl out for a date. She didn't care. Absolute humiliation. This devastates some young men. Absolutely devastates. There's a wonderful TED Talk recently about, just a couple of these types of rejection events that just destroy an entire lifetime. But not real men. See, real men are sociopathic. They so remove themselves from their needs, from their feelings, from care for anyone else. It's all cool, cold, sociopathic. Not warm, passionate, empathic, compassionate, sociopathic. It's cool. It's cool. And this, in the extreme of gangs and stuff, gets taken to the next level. Where the most sociopathic boy, the boy with the most abuse who has not been healed or honored in that abuse in any way, induces the rest of the gang into that same sociopathic state, as Gary Slutkin and the PBS series This Emotional Life talk about the viral nature of emotions. If you do not heal a disease, physically or emotionally, in another, it will spread. It's viral. So, someone who's been absolutely shamed and humiliated into complete rage and despair and all that, and then shamed for having that rage and despair. This is the gang leader. The one who is so sociopathic, they know no fear, because they've felt it all before. And their job is to induce the rest of the gang into that same state. You don't mind if we gang rape your sister, right? Oh, little pussy, right? How do you feel about this? You want to be punched up? You want to be punched up? You think your little sister is so special? Okay, you can gang rape my sister. You know, this is the mechanism. There's no difference. It's just these are teens reenacting the parental abuse to each other and to themselves, getting deeper and deeper into the sociopathic state in which I don't know who I am in this. That's been lost long ago. And of course comes the New Age shame. Be authentic. Be who you are. Oh my God. You know, it's like being rejected is shameful. And what is rejected in my life is not my masculine success, this and that, and all the cultural status things. What's rejected is my emotional need, is my panic, is my trauma, is my intense focus on detail, is my sensitivity, is everything feminine about me is what is rejected. That is shamed, constantly shamed. Being lied to is shameful. A wife cheats on her husband, and everyone in the community knows. And no one takes a stand for the husband. He's left alone in this culture to find out and to feel like a complete fool for expecting honor from anyone. And what's the message? What an idiot. What did he think would happen? He was busy making money over in Germany. What did he think? The fool. You know, it's like, she's just getting her needs met. Da, 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 da. Why was he so blind? You know, we blame the person who is violated. And we shame him for not knowing rather than making a point of telling him. You were a fool. What to trust, to need, to honor the relationship. Go, you know, grow up. Go fuck around yourself. You know, we don't have time to honor your trust. If you're too dumb to realize that this is the way life is, well, we don't have time for you. Crying about it. I mean, give me a break. You wanted me to tell you? Why didn't you look yourself? Da, 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 da. And it's a shaming of the one being hurt, the one being bullied, the boy that comes home beaten and bloody and is met with a tirade with his father. Why? Because he was bullied. What's wrong with you that you're bullied? It's the same message. Being too sensitive is shameful. Goodness gracious, you're still going on about that? Oh, God, be cool. Let it go. Again, you must be someone you cannot be. And if you don't do that, or at least don't give us the courtesy of pretending to be someone you cannot be, something wrong with you. We don't have time for you. Feeling hurt is shameful. Come on, be cool. No big deal. Get over it. It's life. Come on, smile. Join the party again. Sure, she did this, she did that. It's life. You know, go fuck around. Being lonely is shameful. Who needs anyone? Come on, be an adult. That's life. Who needs anyone? I don't need anyone. You need someone? Oh, get a life. You know, you have needs. You're lonely. Well, I just won't ask you how you are anymore, because I like people when I say, how are you? I like people who say, fine. You say you're lonely? What am I supposed to do with that? Come on. You know how the game is played. Get out of here. I'll go ask someone else how they're doing. And fine, great. Just got a promotion, just bought a new car. Great. Feeling hate or revenge is shameful. Oh gosh, they're a bit over the top. They're a bit intense. Look at her emotion. Oh, she's so jealous. This is the favorite shame of women. Let's induce a deep biological state of attachment. Let's betray the attachment. And then let's sit around and gossip about how needy she is. Oh, she's one of those. Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. It's like, what's a man got to do to just fuck around? I mean, give me a break. It's up to you. You chose X, now you deal with it. You picked that woman. She betrayed you. Well, live and learn. I don't want to hear about it. Live and learn. You take responsibility. It's all your fault. I don't want to deal with it. If we don't want you, there's something wrong with you. There's not something wrong with us that we can't have any space in this community, in this situation for you. Or that we don't have any space for your sensitivity, or we don't have any space for your needs. There's something wrong with you. This, by the way, is particularly difficult for the 10 to 20% of men who biologically, according to Dr. Elaine Aron's research in A Highly Sensitive Person, who biologically hear and feel things at 3 to 500% louder volume than the rest of the population. Because in a culture that doesn't care enough about emotional literacy to even tell the rest of the population that there is this population and that this is biological, this is not an attention, because this is what we do, attention seekers, drama queen, blah, 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 blah. Anything that is outside the norm, we shame it and blame it, and we demand that a sensitive person be something they cannot be. We don't turn the volume down for them. Oh gosh, thank you. Now I can concentrate without having a splitting migraine headache. No. We give them a little punch in the ribs to further overstimulate them and come on, get it together, smile, smile. Put a mask on and tell me that while I'm completely violating everything about you, tell me I'm okay, because I don't want to deal with the fact that I can't even care enough about you to learn what works for you. Come on, everyone else is enjoying it. Why aren't you? What's wrong with you that you can't be like everyone else when you're not like everyone else? And I can't be bothered to learn about that. If you trusted falsely, it's your fault. I can't tell you the number of conversations I've overheard blaming, women who go out on a first date and go a little fast or something, and something goes wrong, their heart gets broken, this and that and the other. Their friends are right there to tell them how dumb they are to have trusted, how dumb they are. You don't go to a person's, you fool, you idiot. You don't walk in a dark street. I mean, you don't know that this world is full of shit and doesn't care about blah, 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 blah. You thought people liked, you thought you were safe. Where have you been, you fool? Blame the victim. Blame the victim. Much more than you blame the abuser. Blame the victim. We only want you you have no value unless you are efficient and successful. So there's a very, a very culturally sanctioned thing. If you're quick, if you're witty, if you make me look good, if you embody things that this culture deifies, whether it's looks or having lots of sex if you're a man or whatever it is, we value you for that and not for anything else. So if you have any other sides, just have the decency to keep them away. They are not welcome here. All of this produces shame because the consistent message is who you are, particularly on a feminine level, is not welcome. So this is what I've received as the message of deep shame, starting at birth, going from parents to teachers to parents of friends. into the community, into the business world, this message has all stayed the same. Now, the technical realities of the situation are somewhat different, meaning that if there is pain, failure, rejection, exclusion, separation, or blame, there is a shared ecology. You know, you have this in the thing of, he dumped me or she dumped me. How could that happen? And there's, of course, a wide range of things, but there's always a shared ecology, on the part of the person who's very surprised they were dumped. Did you ask him or her what her needs were? Did you ask him or her how you were doing in those needs? Did you look at him or her body language to see that it didn't match at all what she or he was saying? Did you check in from time to time? Did you do any exercises? Did you learn about what had broken up past relationships? No. I just read in a magazine that when someone does this, that means they're into you, and then they dump me. Well, did you ask them if they agreed with that magazine article? Maybe that's how the magazine writer was. So there's a part of the one who, in a normal relationship of two lovers or two friends, etc., there is a shared responsibility, the ability and willingness to respond, that affects the degree and whether or not there is failure, pain, rejection, exclusion, separation, and blame. And it's a little bit like bridge building, because for there to be success, the bridge has to be built. But what doesn't need to happen is you can have one person who builds 80% of the bridge, and the other person builds 20% of the bridge, and they still meet. You can have a parent that knows 95% of what needs to go on for a child to be healthy, happy, and successful. You can have a child that knows 5%. As long as the parent knows the 95%, that child will succeed. You can meet in the middle. Most people do not meet in the exact middle. One person is a great communicator. The other person has learned, in order to deal with all this coping mechanism, that it's dangerous to talk to an abusive authority figure. They're projecting that because the trauma has not been resolved. So they're silent. And so it takes an unusual amount of skill to induce knowing out of that silence, to cue the body language, to bring that person back into the present where they can talk about this. But when there is a failure, a shame, an exclusion, a blame, etc., it means that between the two of them, the gap was too big. I had 50%, you had 20%. We drove along this bridge and we both fell in the water. Okay. It's a shared dynamic. Shame, though, is the message, no, I did everything right. You did everything wrong. It's all about you. It goes back to the parent message. It's like, I'm perfect, you're not. But of course, this is not logical. The perfect person would see that the other person has these deficiencies. The perfect bridge builder doesn't arrive at a bridge building site and say, oh, you have 3 steel bars. This bridge requires 3,680 steel bars. You've got just what we need to build this bridge. This is a failure in perception on the part that can't count the difference between, okay, you've got 3 steel bars. You cannot get across this bridge with 3 steel bars. So we're not going to begin this relationship until either I have the other 3,800 steel bars so that you can show up with your 3 steel bars and I'll throw up with the remainder and we'll build it together, but I need to provide all the materials, or we cannot build this bridge. So, addicted teen who's learned that every time he opens his mouth, he's shamed to such a degree where he feels shame himself even when you're not shaming it, and projects it onto you. Very difficult to make connection there on an emotional level, because to the degree that he feels emotional is to the degree that he feels inadequate, because the wound is that deep. Well, a trained professional says, either I do not have the skill, patience, resources, and willingness to make this connection. So this is a doomed therapeutic relationship. Or, let me look at what you've got. Okay, you've got 3 steel bars. Every third visit, you're willing to talk about something for 2 sentences before you clam up. Okay, based on a two-sentence outward flow every 3 visits, based on the growth rate, it is going to take roughly 5 years for us to get anywhere using this method. Am I willing to use another method? Am I willing to do a survival camping training with this person, because in one weekend with a survival camping training protocol, this person will open up for 3 hours? Yeah, I'm not willing to do that. I just want to sit in my office, and every third visit he can make progress and I can hem and haw, this is taking a lot of time, We'll just have to limit it to your limitations. You can change the environment. Change the set and setting, change the tools, change the technology, and suddenly with the other person exactly where they were, you can make connection 5, 10, 20, 100 times faster. This would be, for example, something Tim Ferriss is very good with, his hacking of different language learning skills and all that. Fine, you can learn language this way, this way, this way, or you can learn it 5, 10, 20 times faster. But this responsibility, which is equal in a friendship, etc., is not equal with a parent and a child. It is not equal with a therapist and a therapeutic patient. It is not equal with a surgeon and a medical patient. You don't go into a hospital and the surgeon says, hey, what do you want to work on today? Well, not much. Well, I guess we'll just sit here until you know what you want to work on. How about that? No. The surgeon doesn't say, what do you want to work on? He says, it's my job to figure out. May I ask you to lay down on this X-ray machine? I'd like to take a little bit of sample of your blood. What I'm checking for is this, 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 and this. I'm going to diagnose what's going on. I'm going to explain it to you. I'm 89% sure of this. We're going to do this. If it's this way, we'll do this. If it's this way, do this. And it's my job to see that you go out of here with a healthy body. How about that? See, that's billions of dollars of technology that has been put into medical science in the last 100 years, rather than a few millions of scattered and erratic bits of technology that has gone into emotional and mental science in the last 100 years. Part of chauvinism, the internal world, is much less important in a male chauvinistic paradigm, where anything feminine, emotional, etc., is automatically not as interesting or worth studying. As long as you look good and can get your job done, we don't care about if you're feeling. Just don't kill yourself before we get this project finished. Please, could we ask that much out of you? And so you need to build a bridge, and in a vertical relationship where you have a therapist, a parent, a community leader, a government, etc., it is not the responsibility of the other party to have an equal part of the bridge in an equal social relationship. But when you're paying $175 an hour, when you're going to someone who is supposedly trained, it is their job to diagnose what's going on. It's their job to assess whether or not they can respond adequately to the diagnosis, to include you in that, and to either take ownership of the success or to refer you to someone more competent. The plastic surgeon that does brain surgery and kills you is criminally negligent for not even knowing the boundaries of their expertise. And so what happens in a lot of emotional work, I've done $150,000 of therapy, another $30,000 in workshops, and about a third of the time the experience is negative, meaning it's weakening and this, that, confusing, this, that, and the other. But a third of the time it's kind of a mix of some ups, some downs. You got they're about the same, which meaning if it takes time off work and all, there can be a slight negative. About a third of the time it's very helpful. In the alternative, relegated, to that lower class area of work in a male chauvinistic culture, where it's emotions. Emotions are supposed to happen naturally. Now, spaceships, oh no, spaceships aren't supposed to happen naturally. They have to be designed like this. Metal has to be tested. We have to do this. We have to do 3,000 tests in zero gravity, bending this metal to see what it does here. Well, how about we do that with my emotions? How about we see how many times I can be betrayed before I snap? Why would we waste our time on that? Because it's me? Because I matter? No, you don't matter. Spaceships matter. We're going to do this test on metal. We're not going to do the test on you. We're not going to do the test on the demographic. That's all supposed to, that's women's stuff. It's supposed to happen naturally, So, I thought you were a man. Emotional stuff? Let's get back to chemistry and, physical stuff. And let's ignore any areas that the emotions affect the body. Come on. So this is not done. And what typically happens in my experience with 30 practitioners is amazing breakthrough for this or that person because it happened to be the right fit for them. In other words, the protocol is, this is what I do. This is kind of the presentation of the healer, the practitioner. I do this, blah, 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 blah. And that happens to be the right medicine for a certain percentage of the population, so they improve. For example, if someone says, I give acid, and someone is too alkaline, well, for anyone who's too alkaline, that will be good medicine. For everyone who's already too acidic, that is toxic. But this is what I do. I do this, and I have some great results. I talked with this person. They said that, they 1-2 sessions with me, their life just magically turned around. So they do their thing, and it doesn't work. It's confusing. Like, I've paid you $1,000. I feel the same or worse. And they don't, like the surgeon, say, well, I apologize. I should have referred you to this specialist. Let me test this. Let me see what I missed. This is on me. They don't do that. No, it's, well, this other person did well. What can I say? You want to continue? I'm here for you. And it's up to the patient. Well, someone's here for me. And this doesn't happen. But the message that goes in when you have a shame-based culture and all this is, if someone gets worse, it's all about you. You must have not been a good enough therapeutic patient. You must have been too sensitive for the therapist. You must have been too needy for the therapist. And what can the poor therapist do? They just do what they do, and but you ruined it. And the message is from the therapist, like, I can't do anything without you. Now, this is a little bit like the surgeon saying, I'm just going to repair your bone because that's what I do. It wasn't really broken, but I'm going to repair it anyway. And your sore muscle is still hurting. Well, take a couple of pills and call me. So the shaming circle happens. I will do something to traumatize you. I will do something to weaken you and destabilize you. This is the core delivery, and this is what's been happening with the Human Awareness Institute. I will do something to traumatize you. So in 1993, Peter broke his high agreements, which on some level scared me because I was never safe when my parents were lying. And as soon as Peter escalated the romantic relationship in our first session, he's out of integrity with his wife and his high agreements. So, fear level number one. Then he brings in homosexuality, which for anyone in my generation who's grown up around the media and all this around homosexuality, and who's tuned in and sensitive, exploring your homosexuality is a traumatizing prospect, because this culture, less so now and less so in liberal circles, this culture has a segment of the population that will tear those people to shreds. So you invite someone, hey, how would you like to be a homosexual? You've been over in the safe camp being heterosexual. Now over here, there's a certain percentage of the population who's going to shame you, jeer at you, humiliate you, threaten you, beat you up if you're alone, this, that, and the other. And how would you like to come over here? It's absolutely terrifying. Well, come on over here. I love you, I care about you, come over into that terrain. Let's not talk about any of that terror, etc., but I'm just being nice to you. You're inviting me into a terrifying circle within the cult shame abuse cycle. I'm going to charge you money, which brings in an element of prostitution, another shame cycle in the culture. Again, if you come into here, see, as soon as you give a child a secret that this culture will shame, you have weakened the safety of that child. Dad comes home drunk. The child sees he's drunk. Dad says, don't tell anyone. It's bad for my career. This has weakened the child. We're born in integrity. We're not born with secrets. We're born in integrity. I say what I see, and then we go to religion. God will burn you in hell if you don't tell the truth. You must tell the truth. So I'm either going to get Dad beating me or God burning me in hell. I'm told to be the truth all the time, except in this area. I don't know how to deal with this. A child does not know how to deal with this. The child goes a bit insane. Has to split into different compartments. Whenever you split a unified force into this one's pulling you this way and this one's pulling you this way, you've reduced the net energy available to that child. Where now they're part frozen in the secret that they should never have been asked to carry. Child walks in on Dad kissing and making out with another woman. Child doesn't understand sexuality. What's going on? But the look in Dad's eyes says that this is something disgusting and bad. Well, then why are you doing it? I don't understand. The look in that Dad's eyes says, you're too dumb to understand, but don't tell your mother. This would ruin the marriage. The child's now been made responsible for Dad's inadequacies. And of course, when the marriage breaks up, it's my fault. I have no idea how I could possibly do anything different, but it's my fault. This is paralyzing. This is abuse. To put someone in a secret that they cannot carry. And as soon as an authority figure, like a therapist, says, yeah, Sarah's not fully on board in this, I'm doing this, you've heard the high agreements, you're not fully making, some part is getting alarmed. This is not safe. I didn't ask to carry this secret for you. I came here for help. I wanted to give secrets back to the people that gave them to me. And you've given me one of your own. You've given me two. You've given me power that is not mine. And this is always the abuse of a secret of infidelity, a secret of betrayal. I shouldn't be telling you this, but I cheated on your mother. Don't tell her. You've just destroyed any feasibility of anything healthy in that relationship. It's like the child takes it on, of course, because when we're traumatized, the most deadly thing is feeling out of control. It is absolutely traumatizing to feel your life is in danger and you have no control. So what the child always does is it calms down the trauma with a synthetic manufacture of a false control. I'm in control, I have this secret, I can do this, etc. But it is not in control. The moment Peter gave me those two secrets, he disoriented the relationship between him, the facilitators, and his wife, Sarah. Here's the abuse in a therapeutic setting. So people do this abuse all the time in friendships and all that. I felt a similar degree of abuse when a Tantra teacher in the community invited me to sex on condition I don't tell his partner, who I knew and was also in the community. And it upset me so much because it's like, how do I show up with honor and meet her knowing that I'm carrying the secret of her betrayal? I didn't ask for that secret. No one asked me, may I give you a devastating secret that makes you responsible for my career, my life, etc. No one asked me. I didn't ask to carry that load. I didn't need to know you are not faithful. I didn't want to know. But you've told me, without asking me, am I willing to carry your secret? Got to do this on the down and low. What does that mean? Well, you can't tell my wife, my girlfriend. And I didn't know how to hold it. I've told the truth to every friend and every lover my entire life, proactively, meaning by proactively, I have conversations with people where, as we're getting to know each other, and I say, I just want to make sure that you know who you're dealing with. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, and these are the kind of things I imagine someone like you would be upset by. So I want to make very clear that you understand that I believe this for this reason and this reason, and I would believe this, and no, I will never lie to you, and I will never cheat on you. But I will also not shut up about this if this comes about. I will also leave the relationship if this starts to happen. I want you to know who you're dealing with. How do I deal with that? In that case, I brought it to Penny, who knew both people at the high office. And she said, I recommend not getting involved. I said, this is how you treat your friends? I mean, this has been upsetting me so much, I'm not going to high events. Because I don't want to meet these people and be part of this lie. She said, well, I'm not going to say anything. She's working right next to her. And it's like, is this what you have to do to get through a community based on love, intimacy, and sexuality? Where's the into me you see? I don't know how to deal with this. So I called him. I said, you've got to tell her or I will. I don't want to carry this. He says, you don't want to mess with me. I will be at your house in 20 minutes. It's like, do I want to be beaten up? Do I want to have an enemy that's this assertive? He said, I'll never do it again. I don't believe it for a moment. But I go along with the lie. What? Because I don't want to be beaten up? And this is a Tantra teacher. See, this is a very different... When you cannot... The roles of a mental emotional healer are sacred. And it violates those roles to give a patient secrets that shouldn't even be happening. For you to be a teacher in mental, in intimate, healthy, loving relationships that are sustainable, blah, 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 you've got to be able to honor your agreements. So I get taken into a traumatic state over this in 1993, and I'm charged money to be worked up into this confusion and passive-aggressive energy, whatever. Now, one of the things that in the superhuman shame dynamic, where the parent can make no mistake, the authority figure can make no mistake, just look at the US government. When does it ever apologize for any of its enormous barrage of endless mistakes? We don't apologize. In the superhuman shame dynamic, there's silence, denial, etc. of the mistake of the abuser of the power structure, which, when this has gone on for an entire childhood and life, makes sense, because the abuse survivor in this kind of dynamic of childhood abuse has gotten the message from teachers, parents, etc., that there is nothing wrong with the parent, that everything is wrong with them. And so that's the predisposition to look for what's wrong with me. Like, I didn't look at Peter Sandhill and say, what's wrong with him? I thought, here's this cool guy that I like, who says he loves me and is in lust with me, who's being nice to me, who's spending time with me, and there must be something wrong with me. And Peter goes right along with that. See, this is the shame, the superhuman shame. I don't make mistakes, you make mistakes. So when I start becoming fidgety, uncomfortable in my body, passive-aggressive, pushing boundaries, how about this? And there's no boundary, and I just comment to Peter, I said, I'm all over the place in our sessions, and I'm not growing at all. I haven't learned anything. I'm not learning anything. And he says, you're right. You're right. I'm loving you, but you are not learning anything. I'm here for you, but these coping mechanisms and stuff of dealing with, he doesn't use any of that words, but that's my language now. All this stuff that you're doing to cope with what I'm evoking in you doesn't seem to be helping you very much. It was trying to alert me that something was very wrong in that session. I mean, it's not 5 minutes before I sit down. Peter's wearing sweatpants, white sweatpants with a huge bulge in it. We're 2 feet away. And I've learned from the high workshops, be direct. I say, well, Peter, what's that bulge in your pants? He says, it's an erection. I say, what does that mean? He says, I'm attracted to you. I said, what does that mean? Well, I'm homosexual, I'm bisexual, I'm starting to explore an open relationship. This is what's going on in my marriage, this and this. And I'm right into secret keeping. Can't talk, can't do this, can't do that. And I'm paying money to get more and more uncomfortable because I cannot cope as an emotionally illiterate American man with a severe abuse history. I cannot cope with this terrain. Of course I want a nice man to love me. Of course I want attention. Do I want a prostitute? No. Did I come here for a homosexual experience? Absolutely not. I thought Peter was funny and da-da-da-da-da. So I withdraw, and Peter, for the next more than a decade, denies, blocks, and refuses to apologize for absolutely everything. He leaves me carrying the bag. It's much worse than that, because any trained therapist that would have asked a few questions and looked at my body language would have said, you are dealing with regressed trauma. You are not safe for yourself and other people until you understand what trauma is. And we look at this, and I'm not a trauma-trained therapist. You need to talk with someone else. I'm not even licensed. I don't know what I'm doing here. And it's a big conflict of interest, that I'm attracted to you, and so I'm not a safe person for you. Now, the next wave of this is Peter is very nice to me again after I was induced into a traumatic state by a high intern who shamed me in front of a lover who had just rejected me the week before over dental floss. And I just fall apart. And he's nice to me. I mean, Peter has always been nice to me. Maybe he's always been attracted to me, and I have no idea, but he's always been disproportionately nice to me in workshops. And he's there for me in the level 4. And I'm in a difficult state. I've, dealing with suicide coming up every 2 to 8 years, realizing that I'm in more pain than well-being by a big margin, and I don't know what to do about it. Because I've done the diet, I've built the houses, I've made the money, I've done the jogging, I've done the few thousand hours of meditation, I've done the $150,000 of therapy, I've done the 30,000 in workshops, I've done everything I know to do, and I'm in more pain than well-being by a large margin, and I'm getting tired. I don't know what else to do. So I look at the one thing I haven't explored, psychedelics. Peter wanted me to do MDMA with him in 1993, together in his house, and have me pay him for it, after expressing his lust for me, which would have been an absolute tragedy. And thank heavens my body started behaving all weirdly and I left. But there he is being nice to me again. And psychedelics is the one thing I've shied away from. I've never been drunk in my life. I've never been high. I don't want that. I want to do it the serious way, right? The meditation. I've done 2,000 hours of meditation. I want this. I've done tens of thousands of pages of diary. I've written 5,000 poems. I've done hundreds of different art projects, working with therapy, etc. And it's not alleviating this mysterious thing of shame and trauma that no one's talking about, or when I go into it, I just go numb. So, my attitude when you're about to die, it's a pretty final decision. I've got all the helium ready, but let's give it a shot. I mean, that's always, what usually keeps me hanging in there for another couple of years is let's give it a shot. You haven't been around the world, it'd be kind of a shame to die and then find you would have been so happy if you just tried Venezuela. Well, let's travel around a bit. Okay, we've traveled around the world. Okay, Thailand is it. Great. Still not cutting it. Partly the visa issue. It's all, it's such a hassle. Can't get a work permit for this, this anyway. So I got to keep this job going so I can go to Thailand more often. I'm getting tired, So I haven't tried psychedelics. Let's read some books, Food for the Gods, Acid Test. Wow, there's this thing called PTSD. Never really heard of it other than from military people. Didn't think it had anything to do with me, but it might help. So I asked Peter Sandhill to be my sitter for my first mushroom experience. And we have the same thing. Trauma around broken agreements. Now, I participated in this to some degree because I told him, I want you to be a human being. I'm sick of all I'm sick of all these therapists telling me I can't do this, and that, for all these. And it's like, I want someone who cares about me and my well-being, whatever works. Now, I didn't know that MDMA would be part of the session. I'd never fallen in love with a man before, so I'm not expecting Peter to have to break his high agreements to do this session. Because, again, I'm trying to find some insight that'll keep me alive. I'm terrified, but he pushes me to triple the dose. I'm absolutely terrified. He says he will absolutely be there for me. An hour into the session, he tells me he hasn't told his wife. I'm a secret keeper again. Some part of me loves it. I'm special. This is the bait. Every kid, Dad told me something Mom doesn't know. And every kid is absolutely devastated by being responsible for his, parents' marriage and all this. So it's the same stuff. The re-traumatization occurs because in the overdose, at Peter's insistence, it's just very, very dissociative. He suggests that I do MDMA. I don't respond. He suggests it again 30 minutes later. I take MDMA. I go into a channeling state and fall madly in love with Peter Sandhill. I didn't see it coming. I don't know if he did, but I did not see that coming. But now I'm madly in love with the first man in my life who's charging money to escalate a romantic relationship. He's kissing me. He's talking about this love. He's making me a secret keeper with his wife. He's saying we can talk about this personal relationship later. And he does not show up for the session on time on the next day, and I freak out. I have early childhood attachment disorder. I have never been more attached to anyone in my life, courtesy of overdosing on 2 substances at Peter's instigation at high doses upon a pledge of support. And this is the first time a therapist has not shown up for a session at one of the highest rates, $175 an hour, for the very first integration session. And he's batted away my various requests for need. I need you to help me integrate this. I need to talk about this. You need to look at some of your blind spots. He's batted what would keep me safe away during the whole session. He's introduced elements that make me unsafe. The secrecy with Sarah, breaking his high agreements, that now again alert me that I'm in this position that no therapeutic patient should be in. This is not an equal relationship of friends. I have never engaged with a facilitator in my life without paying money, which provides the protection of the role. Other than Jason Weston, who I invited to my house, against Peter's protests, I might add, to teach Jason and Marcy about real estate investing, something that I know enough about to have a sense it would save High $50,000 to $100,000 if it buys land and builds, because it saved me about 20% in my real estate investing activities, and I'd studied it, and it had been very useful for me when I built 2 houses and this and that and the other. So that's the only time I've engaged with a facilitator without being paying, is when I invited Jason and Marcy to my house to give something to High. I had to pay money to process my absolute freak out and trauma when Peter wasn't there, and didn't even take the time to communicate that he would be late. There's the betrayal of the agreement, of course, the promise to protect me. Rather than honoring what I asked for, he pushes a new level of trauma by telling me that with his new psychic powers that he's learning from Linda Sassara, he sees that the very best future for me is for me to marry this woman I've known for a week, who seems completely inappropriate. I told him, I don't see anything around this. You know, I need tons of time. That's been my biggest block. And she's a student and a full-time employee. You know, I do relationships like this. She's an upper-class Thai citizen who is a virgin, and if I hold her hand in public, her family will be shamed. I want this, and he says, well, all I can say, the best future for your reality. This is when the pleaser in me, because in the abusive parent thing, that what's going on is diversion. I began the psychedelic session with Peter saying, you really hurt me in 1993. I don't know why yet, because it's buried so deep. But that's the first thing out of my mouth as I get high on psilocybin for the first time in my life, is you really hurt me. Peter brushes it aside. I'm ready to be done with that. So we don't unpack it. I have no idea what I was saying. When you open up into the right brain, which is what psychedelics do, they bypass the linear logic. I don't know why I'm saying these things. That's the gift, is to see things you cannot see with your linear logic brain. My linear logic brain is saying Peter's the expert, Peter's the therapist, blah, 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 blah. He must know what he's doing. My right brain knows a different story. My right brain understands the abuse that went on here and understands how many women were hurt by me not knowing I had PTSD over the last 30 high workshops, and how much I was hurt by being re-traumatized by a number of people within the community by not knowing how to protect myself, because I didn't even know what the disease was, let alone what created it. And it has been a nightmare trying to navigate that. The last thing I wanted to do was hurt people and be hurt, and it happened again and again. And I had no vocabulary after working with 4 facilitators, after working with more than 26 other practitioners. This is maddening. He insists that this relationship with Weepa is great, and while he will not make time to integrate the session, while he will not make time to talk about us, which was a very key request I made, can we talk about us? No, let's talk about it later. Let's still talk about it later. He dragged that on for 6 months. He has all the time in the world to tell me all the things that I'm doing wrong and need to do more of to make his fantasy of this marriage with one of the most inappropriate women I've ever met. And I want to please Peter with this diversion game. I'm madly in love with him. I know, because when I told him about his blind spots, he said he didn't have any. He just shut that one right down before he even opened it. He hurt me, he shut that one down. He's not owning anything. This is a man who can't own anything. I'm in love with a man who can't own his shit, who doesn't understand his role, who doesn't have honor in the role. I've asked him to be a king. Again, something I didn't fully understand. I said, be of service, Peter. This is so important to who you are. Just, okay, nothing. Take money out of this relationship, Peter. Take money out of this relationship. No, I won't take money out of this relationship. I'm going to charge you for a romantic relationship, tripling the impact of this abuse. Because if I'm just a man who doesn't know how to honor and respect your sensitive side, who doesn't understand trauma enough to unpack it, who can't own his shit, that's one thing. But if you're paying me as a shaman, a therapist, and a high facilitator, the impact is devastating. It's a tenfold impact when someone in one of these authority roles does the abuse. I asked him 5 times, take money out of the relationship. No. I am going to charge you money to abuse you. And we're not going to call it abuse. We cannot go there because I'm not big enough to go into that terrain. And so I'm charged money. There's a whole withdrawal, shame, abandonment thing in which he stops responding to my emails but says everything's fine. In which I try and give him gifts as a lover and he says they're not good enough, and then I'm ruining it by asking and It's all my fault. After 6 months of this, my body explodes in a way I don't understand. I don't even know what the word trauma means yet. And I tell the facilitators the entire story in 45 minutes of grief, rage, terror, and pain and loneliness. And I ask every single facilitator, please hold me. Please show up and listen to me. Because Peter has gone from cutting off emails, etc., to shaming me. He's gone from saying, we'll talk about this later, which never happens, being dragged on for months, to actually, in his last email, saying, Dane, you've got to do your own work. It's like, you can't be who you are. You can't be where you are. I will charge you money to shame you. And not a single facilitator responds. They can't hear that they've done anything wrong either. They've trained Peter, they've recommended Peter. Ann Watts in the last level 4, as she always does, recommended Peter to every participant again. And following that recommendation, I decided to take up Peter's initial thing that he wanted to do drugs with me. And I said, I don't want you to do drugs with me, Peter. I want you to hold the space for me. I want you to be there protecting me. Okay? No drugs for Peter. He said he would do it. So if he ends up on top of me talking about love, French kissing me for the first time I French kiss someone, me falling madly in love, and that's with him off drugs, what do you think would have happened if I'd taken MDMA with him in his house when he's in lust with me? MDMA reduces the capacity for critical judgment. I didn't know that at the time. So when he tells me he hasn't told Sarah there's a psychedelic session, I'm thinking to myself, I remember the thought. It's like, oh, this is how the facilitators get on. I wonder why they always talk so positively about each other, and people give me a hard time for telling them what they don't want to hear all the time. I tell a woman, I just had a fantasy about that other woman. Oh, I don't want to hear that. Well, I don't want to keep a secret. So, if you don't like that part of me, I want you to know just what's going on and why. And I want a relationship where I can share every thought and feeling and back and forth. But people hate that. I have women, getting naked, unannounced in my living room, high participants, just undressing spontaneously and inviting sex. And I say, well, could we have a 4-hour conversation before so that you know what to expect and I know what to expect? And they're like, oh gosh, they just put their clothes back on and walk off. I don't want this kind of passive dishonesty or lies. The first thing from Jason is, thank you for not going to the police. We're going to have a meeting and we're going to exclude you. You're not invited. So my abuser gets invited to the meeting. I'm the only one left out. I've gotten no support. My first encounter with Anne, she didn't fully believe what I said. Started prevaricating like a lawyer, like, well, if this happened, and if you saw it that way, and this, I have a 10-hour recording of the entire thing. There's no ifs. You think I'm an idiot? And you've told me I have a genius level of self-awareness. You've been with me and you've been my therapist for 5 relationships. I have never lied. You have never once said you have a tendency to exaggerate this, that, and the other, You've backed me up every single time except when it comes to your boy and your organization, and you betray me in the first conversation after 15 years of abuse, I feel like I must be doing something wrong, of course, because Anne doesn't treat people like this, but she's treating me this way for the first time in our relationship. When I need the most help, I'm getting less. This induces, see, because I will do something to traumatize you. I will deny my impact. This is the second thing. I will shame you for your response to being traumatized. Trauma is such a big deal. It's a feeling of one's life being in danger, which in this case erupted. The reason I contacted the facilitators and broke all Peter's secrecy was because I couldn't drive. And I knew it was connected with Peter Sandhill. I knew that I almost killed someone on Highway 101, and if I didn't do something, I was going to kill someone to protect Peter Sandhill's lie. This is how deeply traumatized and abused children enact this when they have a dysfunctional therapist. The contract goes to the new authority figure unless it's dealt with. Well, how does it get dealt with when the child is shamed their entire life and told it's their fault? They don't know there's anything to deal with. And when you have incompetent therapists who don't look into the issue and take it off, when the therapist makes a mistake, you assume it's your fault again. And here's them, the whole high facilitator body, 4 of my therapists, facilitators for all of my workshops, all rejecting what would help me come out of high cortisol, holding me and giving a message that you're going to be safe. That is what that little boy needed in that moment more than anything else. And that is the only thing denied. I got legalistic. They all sounded prescripted and identical. We've listened to your recording. We're sorry that you feel bad. That's it. Not, we're sorry, we're not going to show up for you, da-da-da-da-da. Next thing I get is Peter blaming me for ruining his life. First he tells me, you've broken my trust. I will never trust you again for the next, it's your fault. Deny my impact. I will shame you for your response to being traumatized. I will blame and punish you rather than saying, I am so sorry. My goodness, I had no idea that to keep my secret from me and my peers, you were endangering your own life and someone else. That is a disaster. Peter's not at all interested in this whole process with my impact. He is outraged at how this is affecting his marriage and tells me so. He wants nothing to do with me and tells me so. He is outraged that I'm not doing my own work and tells me so. The superhuman shame dynamic, I cannot make a mistake, it's all your fault. If anything goes wrong, it's the patient's fault. He pretends that he's being loving when he's hurting me. He never offers a refund for 15 years of abuse. You get better service at Best Buy. And this is a man claiming love as the parents. My father just died. I go into 45 minutes of some of the abuse that's led 3 of his 5 children to be suicidal, and his great response, it's the complete cover. I can do no wrong. I've loved you unconditionally. Not just loved, I've loved you unconditionally since the day you were born. Let's just, if you didn't find being beaten and lied to and cheated and humiliated, if you didn't feel unconditionally loved by all that, well, there's something wrong with you, because I'm an unconditionally loving person. And so it's give it back to the child. I go to a constellation therapist. Takes him 5 to 10 minutes. He says they're excluding you and shaming you. We do constellation role play and stuff. Every time he's in my role, he's in absolute agony. There's a mountain of shame in the space. The patient, the child, the participant being asked to carry each of the facilitators' shame.